All right, here's our video, part 2 of heat and heat transfer, talking more about thermal energy. We talked a little bit about it last time, so let's go right away to it. Let's get our pen going. Put red on red. What does red on red look like? Right, you can barely see it. All right, let's get a clean slate. All right, so basically, like we said in the last video, thermal energy is a part of kinetic energy. So let's get our pen. Let's use purple. And we use this way of remembering melts. These are all the types of kinetic energy. So again, the kinetic energy is the energy of movement. The energy of movement. And there's these types, right? So we have mechanical. When you ride your bike, that's mechanical energy. E for electrical. When you plug in your toaster, what do you think L is? L is for light. And there's many types of light. Believe it or not, your radio is bringing out light waves. Radio is a form of light. Magnetic energy we'll talk about. T is what's in this video today, thermal. And then we have sound. So that's the kinetic energy. And if it's not kinetic, then there's potential energy. And potential energy is the energy of position, the stored energy, a way to remember it. And we'll talk more about potential energy in later videos. So some student asked the other day, they asked, well, what about nuclear energy? They were curious about nuclear energy. Well, nuclear energy is potential energy. It's stored energy. And we're going to talk about it because we're going to talk about the sun to further explain thermal energy. So let's clear this out and let's draw a sun. Why not? We'll use yellow. All right, and there's our sun, right? Somewhat of a sun. The sun is a yellow dwarf, but it's the perfect size for us. So inside the sun, you do have nuclear energy going on. And again, like we said, that's potential energy. So from this nuclear energy, we're going to get thermal energy. And thermal energy is kinetic. And then from thermal energy, and I'll explain this more, we're going to get this light energy, which is also called radiant energy. Also, you can hear it as solar energy. So all these types you might hear: light energy, radiant energy, solar energy. It's just the movement of photons, right? A photon is one little particle of light that will come to Earth. Here we are, waiting for that light. And the photons take about 8 minutes to reach us. Because remember, they are traveling the speed of light, which is 186,000 miles per second, extremely fast. So let's look more about this nuclear energy to thermal energy to light energy. So let's clear this out. Actually, let's just keep that there for 1 second. So in nuclear energy, we'll just have a little arrow going over here. So the sun is made of hydrogen, and it's made of helium, right? The two most abundant elements in the universe. So what happens is in nuclear energy, we have fusion going on. And think of fusion of two things combining. So these two things fuse together. And what's happening is you're getting four hydrogen atoms, and they're going to fuse into one helium. And that brings up enormous amounts of energy. So that nuclear energy, those four atoms, when they fuse together, they create this one helium atom, and it converts into thermal energy. That's all that enormous amount of heat. Remember, thermal energy is the flow of heat. So let's clear that out and write this down. Thermal energy, we talked about this last video, thermal energy, which they also call heat energy. They also call it internal energy. All these terms, right? is the flow of heat. So here's the interesting thing. These photons that leave the sun, right? They're leaving the sun, heading to Earth. They're taking that thermal energy. It's now transferred to light energy. Now here's the weird thing. Those photons don't have heat until they're absorbed. So light energy has to be absorbed, and then it turns back into thermal energy. That is a simple explanation. So let's look at a picture of that. All right. So let's get our pen ready. So again, in yellow, we have the light energy, the photons coming in from the sun. So this is the light energy. And again, it has energy, but it doesn't have heat. It doesn't have heat until it's absorbed. The minute it's absorbed, you can see in the red here, we have the thermal energy, the flow of heat. Very important to remember that. So the light does have energy. The energy is transformed into thermal energy once it is absorbed. So think of like, let's clear this out a little bit. Right, so if we made the sun again, let's make the sun again. Well, we'll just make whatever. So here's the sun. So when the sunlight enters the Earth's atmosphere, when we see the sunlight, we're not feeling the heat until it actually touches us. So when the sunlight hits us, it's absorbing the light and transferring the energy into thermal energy, and we feel the heat. So only thermal energy is related to heat. Let's think of fire for a minute. Let's get a picture of fire. All right, so here's this fire. And so we'll say fire is made of these elements. It's made of carbon dioxide, CO2. It's also made of this, which you should know by now is water. It's also made of oxygen, nitrogen, right? Those are the elements of fire. So fire has thermal energy. You can feel the heat, so you know there's thermal energy. And it also has radiant energy, which I said before, radiant energy is light energy. You can see the flames. So those are the two. Now, obviously we have thermal energy. You get too close to the fire, you can feel the heat. But the light energy too, when the light energy reaches you, it could be converted to thermal energy also. So let's review. Here are the four types of kinetic energy we talked about. Melts: mechanical, light, thermal, electrical, and sound. We are focusing on thermal for this video. In the other videos, we will continue on thermal energy. We'll also talk about the flow of heat a little more in detail. So remember, thermal energy, and we'll get our pen going there again. Stick with red. Thermal energy, well, it came out to be blue. Why not? Is the flow of heat. The flow of heat is thermal energy. Now, light energy and all these other energies, they can be converted. Even potential energy can be converted to kinetic energy. As we've seen with our picture of the sun, the nuclear energy was converted to kinetic energy in the form of thermal energy. The thermal energy from the sun, when it had those photons, the energy was transferred to light energy. It hit the earth, and that light energy, once it was when it was absorbed, you can say it was observed and absorbed. Once it was absorbed, it created thermal energy. So it was another conversion. All right, in the next video, we'll talk more about heat transfer.